Well, welcome. Good afternoon. This is Quinn Eddy with Onecloud, and welcome to a webinar focused on the next generation of Command Center, and now meet Onecloud. So before we get started, I'd like to introduce today's host. Right now speaking is myself, Quinn Eddy, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Onecloud. And I'm also the former CEO and founder of a product or a company called Star Analytics. And Star Analytics developed a product called Star Command Center. So I do have quite a bit of expertise on that product. And from that standpoint, going to be able to walk you through and compare and contrast how Command Center is different with Onecloud and where we're going from the standpoint of integrating and automating with a focus on performance management and BI applications. I'd also like to introduce David Mercado from Nrl Consulting. David is an expert in Command Center as well as an expert on Onecloud and has worked on a few integrations and implementations already. He's going to, towards the end of the presentation after the demonstration, he'll walk us through some strategies on migrating from Command Center to Onecloud. So with that, we'll start to dive in. Please sit back, enjoy the presentation, and a little bit of entertainment along the way here. So, evolution of automation integration. I hate to admit, but I was around when mainframes were still being used, and they have primarily a lot of command line interfaces and a lot of green screens and so forth, many of which are still in use today. That led to basically mainframe schedulers because you needed to have lots and lots of jobs. You had lots of different operations, lots of data to move around. Mind you, the computing power of one of these mainframes probably was a fraction of what we have in our laptops today, but still, data had to be moved around, whether it was through punch cards or maybe token ring-based networks or whatever it might be. But these mainframe schedulers then morphed into various different types of application workload schedulers from products like AutoSys, BMC Control M, Cisco Title which was acquired by Cisco, or AppWorks, which is now called Automate. So these technologies are actively used today to schedule and automate various different applications, but they oftentimes don't really have a real focus on performance management and BI applications. So let's go through the journey here now. So what do? How can you automate and connect your performance management and BI applications? You can write custom code. You can, for example, create batch scripts and Python scripts or shell scripts to write, for example, Maxell, Essbase Maxell command line. You can use the HFM API and build out your different commands or different operations to run a consolidation or do data validation through Python. There are different ways to do that, but it's difficult, and it's oftentimes pull out your hair, and gives you quite a headache. Of course, then there are single-purpose interfaces. I already mentioned a few of those, like Maxell, Essbase Maxell, which is a command line interface, but often again leaves the responsibility of automating up to the owner of that application, primarily Essbase, or with other applications, for example, with Anaplan with their command line interface. Again, they're single purpose for those particular applications, which really sort of leads you back to a heavy reliance on IT, a heavy reliance upon those different job schedulers that I just previously mentioned. What you lose in the process there is actually the loss of control and the inability for the business user who owns that performance management BI application actually, for example, control the schedules, control the actual handshakes, turning things on and off based upon a finance calendar and so forth. So these are the challenges that have really been pervasive for the last 20, 25 years since performance management has really come to the scene and really taken off as a way that corporations now manage and monitor and build out their corporate planning and financial consolidation systems. So let's go back now to 2008 and introduce Star Command Center. Again, Star Command Center was developed by my previous company, Star Analytics, and Star Command Center actually was acquired by IBM, and the name transitioned from Star Command Center to IBM Cognos Command Center. So in this presentation, I'm actually just going to refer to it generically as Command Center, because oftentimes people just do the same. They just call it CC or Command Center or what have you. But it is great to know that out there in the world, there are hundreds of Command Center customers currently in production, and IBM is definitely using Command Center, best of breed, and really pushing the product to connect and automate not only Oracle Hyperion technologies, but also IBM Cognos technologies. So it is a technology that is completely code-free. It really solves a lot of the challenges that I just spoke about. So, you're really sort of, dancing through the halls like we see here from a clip from Seinfeld. And it allows you to really connect the applications that are typically, again, used in the office of the CFO or from a consolidation perspective into a single workflow that's business owned with self-service capabilities. So this is what Command Center really built its business around, or really built a cult following around, that's now really grown into hundreds of customers, enterprise customers now using this technology on a worldwide basis. In fact, I spoke to a colleague of mine in the Nordics recently, and I was so surprised with how many Command Center deployments there are just in the Finnish market alone. I think it's an impressive amount of impressive use of the technology as it's pushed into the market. So what does Command Center look like? Well, this is how it looks like. It is a Windows-based application. It definitely gets the job done. It provides instant access, instant insight into the various different processes and commands that you might be running. It has lots of features like, for example, an iteration or running parallel tasks and out-of-the-box capabilities with things like Hyperion Essbase or HFM or Hyperion Planning, and of course TM1, and both on-premise and in the cloud. So those application-aware features really help drive Command Center to have those unique features specifically for those applications. And obviously it's a big improvement over the IT-based owned tool sets, which again rely upon custom coding, custom scripting in order to connect and automate those applications together. But again, it's 2008, and this is definitely looking a bit dated, especially when most people now are used to actually interfacing with a cloud technology, a web-based UI, and so forth. So let's start to move forward now. It's 2018, and you have, you're still using Command Center. It works great, but it's honestly, it's not cloud ready. It's a client server technology. You really need to be able to have it interoperate with various different cloud technologies that you might be using in your company, like Workday or NetSuite or or other performance management technologies or BI technologies and so forth. Given it's not cloud ready, you need to think about things like a port. You need to open up a port in order to actually get Command Center to connect with some of these applications and have that bi-directional handshake. Your team really wants to be mobile and modern. Again, I love Command Center. I think it's a wonderful product, and naturally I would, but it's definitely it needs to have a facelift. So that's where a modern interface will actually take things a lot further. And the biggest concern out there is you have so many applications that need to be connected and automated today, often referred to as SaaS sprawl, but basically the number of applications that the office of the CFO or finance, FP&A, consolidations, or sales performance management. These different offices or different departments need to contend with a multitude of applications that they simply did not need to contend with in the past. So you need something that actually can easily connect and automate these various different technologies together, whether or not they exist on-premise or in the cloud. So now meet Onecloud. Onecloud, from all our client experiences, has hit it out of the park in terms of companies and customers being extremely happy with all the benefits that it provides. So as a Command Center customer, if you're using Command Center today, you'll get everything that Command Center offers plus a whole bunch of additional features like native cloud applications. So you don't need to contend with managing software. You don't need to contend with setting things up or owning your own servers and so forth. It seamlessly integrates with various different cloud and on-prem technologies, and we'll get into which technologies those are in a minute, but suffice to say is it has a broad amount of capabilities to connect with these different technologies. It also supports mobility, and it's also secure. So things like single sign-on, capabilities to operate from your mobile phone and so forth are now natively a part of the Onecloud stack. It also, supports not just Hyperion and TM1, but other technologies like Anaplan or Tableau, and a long list of other technologies that we plan to add in as biz apps. And in a future slide here, I'll talk about the different terminology that we have between Command Center and Onecloud. And bottom line, Onecloud supports today's standards. I won't go into which of those standards are, but talk to your e-security group or what have you. These are extremely important when it comes to enterprise technology. And bottom line, also a lot of lessons learned have been baked into Onecloud. Significant improvements around workflow and management. I'll highlight things like lifecycle management as key enhancements that Onecloud is offering. So how does it work? Well, Onecloud is a pure web-based interface, and you're actually going to see a live demo here. But going through it, you have the concept of a Onecloud chain. And a chain basically is made up of different commands, and the commands do different operations based upon the application that we're trying to connect with. So for example, run an import, run a consolidation, load data, run a calculation script, FTP the content, start a service, whatever that might be. Those are different commands inside of Onecloud that can be chained together to create your business process. And as an end user, it's very intuitive. You simply select the various different node that you want to add a new command to, and then this UI will pop up where you can quickly and easily add different types of operations based upon different conditions, perform different types of branching logic, and so forth. I will say that with Onecloud, there are some differences with Command Center, but you can achieve the same things that you can get in Command Center with Onecloud, just a different approach. But what we believe, once you get used to it, you'll really love how it works. Out of the box, we also provide lots of functions for a whole host of new commands or technologies that weren't previously in Command Center, and I'll take you through exactly which one those are in a minute. But basically, these are business aware, they're absolutely code-free with those specific application functions that we all love and know. So once you select the application that you want to use, it's as simple as choosing the command, which again is application specific. If you want to run a calc script, you want to run a TI job, turbo integrator job that is, or run an HFM consolidation, you select that command, and then once you select that command, you simply put in the parameters that you're trying to execute. So for example, the job name, the data load file, which can also be selected as a variable. Again, you'll see this as we go through a demonstration. We tried to make this simple, intuitive, and easy so a business user doesn't have to even worry about any form of code. And of course, the other types of things that we need to also concern ourselves with are built directly inside of Onecloud with a lot of enhancements as well. So for example, the ability to have notifications on a chain level, which is the entire process, or at a command level, which allows you to create notifications on different conditions of that command, on error, on warning, or always send, or integration with corporate messaging platforms like Slack, so that you can actually have a Slack channel that instantly gets updated, let's say if a command actually fails in mid-process. Scheduling, of course, is built right in based upon all sorts of different finance criteria. For example, the third Thursday in the month, or the last month, or the last day in the month, those types of criteria can easily be baked in to your schedule. And then a visualized scheduler that allows you to quickly and easily see your schedule with different filters and different perspectives, that allows you to look at how the entire workflow or the entire job chain, across a continuum of time, whether that's the next 2 hours, the next 24, or the next 2 weeks. And finally, again, the back to Slack is, and I'll show this live, but the integration with corporate messaging platforms is key. As companies move to things like Slack, they need to be able to actually invite users to actually run their own jobs from a messaging platform and get updates on that same messaging platform. So even avoiding the entire Onecloud UI, you can actually get that Onecloud experience straight on that platform. So let's get into some weeds here. How does Command Center compare to Onecloud? So I'm going to break this down into 3 separate sections from a deployment and management perspective. If you've used Command Center in the past, you know that it's a Windows-based environment, you need to install it. It's really truly a true client-server deployment, where you have actually a repository and a FAT client that you need to contend with. That previous screenshot I showed is the Command Center FAT client. And that application repository is where all the metadata and configuration is stored, which again is completely hosted by the client. And the client, and when I mean client, the customer that's using Command Center would be responsible for each of these pieces. On the other hand, with Onecloud, there is no installation. It is purely a cloud technology. You're simply provisioned a tenant, what we call a company. So once you have access to your tenant or company, you can then start to set up your environment. Everything is 100% web and mobile. So you simply need to have a browser, a supported browser, and you're off to the races. And an application repository is simply not required. It's not, you don't have to contend with that, because again, Onecloud is purely cloud, and there's no reason to have or even consider an application repository. From the application perspective, what is supported between Command Center and Onecloud? And this is actually just the selected applications. There are more applications that Onecloud does support today, but the focus again on Command Center was really connecting and automating the Hyperion stack, and with IBM, the Cognos TM1 and business intelligence stacks or applications. So from that perspective, it is living up to the requirements. But with Onecloud, what we've done is we've really pushed the envelope, and we've really made it so that it can not only connect with the existing on-prem solutions like Essbase or HFM, but also new technologies like Workday, Salesforce, Tableau, transformation capabilities out of the box with Onecloud, so you can quickly and easily migrate or change or update your CSV or tabular data sets. Integration with Google Drive and Box and so forth really provide that handshake with corporate standards that are in existence today versus that classical file share on a shared drive somewhere. You now have it sitting in the cloud someplace. So this is really cloud ready, and that hence again, Onecloud is the solution to move from if you're on a Command Center deployment today. And finally, security. Both technologies support single sign-on, just in different capabilities. With Command Center, it's based upon LDAP, an LDAP provider. With OneCloud, it's based upon single sign-on providers like Okta or OneLogin, based upon SAML, which many companies are moving to today. In terms of application security support, basic authentication is the current approach to connect with various different apps that Command Center supports. OneCloud supports the modern ones such as OAuth and certificate auth. And then, of course, security groups, all the things that you do expect to have your business users be able to actually have self-service and the ability to run and monitor their own jobs. You get that with OneCloud, just like you get with Command Center with various security groups. So what is it called in OneCloud? And I thought this would be helpful to have a mapping between some of the terminology that you see inside Command Center versus some of the terminology that you see inside OneCloud. So they are truly different products, brand new from the ground up and so forth. But conceptually, there are some things that as an end user for Command Center, you might be interested, how does that actually work inside OneCloud? What was the thought process and so forth? So again, these are not exact mappings, but we can get to, with OneCloud, we can perform the different types of processes or set those processes up inside OneCloud the same or in a different way, but come up with the same result is what I'm trying to say inside of the, by just simply using the features and commands of OneCloud. But hopefully this gives you an idea that there was a fair amount of thought put into how we actually would create a strategy for customers to migrate to OneCloud and help them with the mapping. But some of the highlights I would like to, and from our conversations, companies have asked, well, what about pre-task actions or post-task actions? We love those in Command Center. How do those work inside OneCloud? Well, we have things called conditional events now. So a conditional event would actually look at the output from a previous command, and I'll show this in a live demo here, but the output of that, and then test that output to see how is that output performing. So, you know, gone are the ways to actually capture text in a post-task action, and in comes OneCloud with outputs, with all the outputs that you need in order to actually capture that content. So we'll show that how that works, but this again, I want to just let you know how we would actually pull this together from a mapping perspective. Architecturally, how does OneCloud, how is it deployed? Well, it is rather similar to Command Center and also very similar to other technologies that integrate cloud and on-prem technologies. So we have here at the top, and I'll use my pointer here, but basically the platform. And so when you're interfacing with OneCloud, you're interfacing with the web application. This platform is interfacing or instructing ground runners that are actually deployed on-premise in your environment. So they're deployed so they can actually connect with the various on-prem applications that you might have. Things like relational technology, maybe legacy, Essbase or HFM. You know, maybe it might be a script execution, for example, batch scripts, shell scripts, flat files, and so forth that need to be interfaced with. So the ground runner does a lot of work. It's basically like the traffic cop that's actually simply doing all the orchestration, and it's getting us directives from the core platform. So the data is not flowing at all through OneCloud at all. It's basically flowing, for example, let's say you make a query from Oracle and you're passing that up and you want to push that into, let's say, planning analytics. That's this flow right there. It's basically coming out of Oracle, flowing like this, and back up. It never flows through our cloud in this architecture. Or let's say you have a flat file that's coming out of SAP, for example, that would flow like this, straight up into, let's say, Planning Analytics or Oracle Analytics Cloud. Again, it doesn't flow through our cloud. If it flows from Workday, it would flow from Workday like this and then back over to Planning Analytics or whatever cloud technology. So again, different ways, different flows, but to suffice to say, in this deployment, or this architecture here, it does not flow through our cloud at all. So I think that also is an important aspect because we are using the peer published REST APIs and the native APIs of these applications to get the job done, to perform those different operations, to move data, to run a consolidation, to run a process, to run a turbo integrator job under planning analytics, whatever that might be, Onecloud can orchestrate that. An interesting thing that a customer just asked us to help with, and we've added that into the technology, is the ability now to also execute, for example, Workday internal processes. So these are types of things that really help with Onecloud being able to orchestrate across not only data integration, but also the operations of various different applications. I do see a couple questions coming in around how the agent works. I will actually answer those at the end, and so just hold tight with any Q&A that you might have, but definitely appreciate the questions, especially on the agent side, but I will answer those in due course here. So what are some of the other considerations? I said this earlier, but again, just to reiterate it, you eliminate the need to manage software upgrades. If you've seen, for example, Salesforce's motto, no software, that's exactly what Onecloud is, where it's no software, nothing for you to manage, no upgrades to contend with. No need to contend with an application repository. The Command Center repository, I've seen many cases where it's just gotten so big. And when I mean big, I mean gigabytes big, where it's not managed well and so forth. It's difficult to upgrade and so forth. You don't have to worry about that with Onecloud at all. It is application repository free. That's all that metadata is maintained and managed by Onecloud. We've done a big improvement on the lifecycle management between dev, test, and production. Lifecycle management in Onecloud, in Command Center definitely, had its capabilities, but we've also learned that some real drawbacks to it. So we've really enhanced that. I will definitely do a demonstration of promotion inside of Onecloud, how that works and how that mapping is set up. And the other big thing with Onecloud is it's supporting a rapidly growing set of performance management BI applications and a whole host of cloud technologies. We get lots of requests from customers and we respond very quickly to those requests. So if you've got technologies that you want to connect and automate with, let us know. If it has a public API or a published API, it's very likely that we can connect and automate with, and we add that into our library of biz apps that we support. Some of those biz apps I showed earlier when comparing Command Center to Onecloud. Another question a lot of people ask about Onecloud are, what are the certifications? These obviously is a very important topic when it comes around to e-security and how Onecloud falls into that. So Onecloud is fully SOC 1, SOC 2 compliant. It's not only SOC 1, SOC 2 compliant, but it's also Type 2 compliant, which is also an important component to our compliance standards. If you're familiar with SOC 1, SOC 2, this is basically all cloud technologies today need to have that level of compliance, and Onecloud certainly has that. We have our SOC 1, SOC 2 reports available upon request, but there are some hurdles that we need to sign an NDA, but I'm sure that's nothing that will stop us from sharing that, of course, with the proper paperwork. The other thing that's also important is EU-US Privacy Shield and GDPR compliance. So Onecloud is fully certified and compliant with these different standards that exist out there, of course, with all the spotlight on GDPR. That's obviously been an important topic across all the cloud technologies, and again, we're fully compliant with that. So with that, I'd like to pause there. I'm going to go do a demonstration, and then we'll come back and hand the baton to David, who will walk us through some migration strategies between Command Center to Onecloud. So get out of the here. and we'll pop over here. So with Onecloud, we have here basically an application. So we simply go to app.onecloud.io, probably one of the simplest URLs that you can think of. And at this point now, I have my password saved. Just to reiterate, Onecloud does support single sign-on through providers like Okta. I'm using basic authentication here. And at this point now, when I log into Onecloud, I get to see my tenant or my company that's been provisioned for me. The name of my tenant is actually my tenant, excuse me, can be split up into multiple workspaces, and this really allows Onecloud to be usable across multiple departments inside of a company. So, for example, you might have an FP&A department versus maybe a corporate consolidation or corporate controllers group versus maybe sales performance management. They interface with different applications, they have different users, they have different security profiles, and so forth. Again, these are important aspects in order to use Onecloud. If you're an administrator inside your workspace, you can control things like your environment. So here, for example, I have my environment split up into dev, test, and production. It looks similar to how this is done inside Command Center, but it is quite a bit different, but with some similar concepts. Some of those similar concepts, for example, we might have workspace variables that we can set up that can be used and applied across the workspace. And of course, those variables can be encrypted. And what I can do, of course, is I can go into an individual workspace, excuse me, individual environment, and I can override the values of those variables. So that allows me to have specific values. So when I promote from dev to test, it will leverage that value in that respective environment. And one feature that our customers love is the ability to color code my environments. Might seem so what, but this is so helpful. So you have a visual cue that you're, in production red, or you're in blue development, or green development, whatever that might be. So let's now dive into a particular environment. If we look here, this is how Onecloud is structured. So we have what are called chains, which are analogous to processes inside Command Center, versus having like the outline structure and so forth in Command Center. We have these different filters up here. So I can filter, for example, on different operations that are interesting. So I'm only seeing chains that are tagged with IBM PA Cloud, or maybe chains that are only tagged with OAC, for example, Oracle Analytics Cloud. So these are chains that allow me to quickly and easily navigate through the UI. Here, at this point now, I can come in, I can do different types of operations, 100% security driven. So if I have the rights to do this, I'll see these different options that pop up. So copy, edit, execute, look at prior versions. So for example, here I can look at prior versions of this chain, and you can see earlier today, I was pretty busy with making some different versions. So I can look at prior versions of this chain and see how it actually looks over time. Let's now actually return to that chain, and we can see now my sample chain that we're going to go through here today. So this is a chain. This is corresponds to a process inside Command Center, and these chains, or this chain, is broken up into individual commands. And that, again, that's terminology that's similar to or the same as in Command Center. So here, for example, I can do different types of operations. So for example, let's look on this here, upload file to Essbase. So I have an application-specific command here that connects to Essbase. I provide, for example, the parameters that are required for that command, sample basic as the database, and the output that I want to, for example, load. Now, there are some different commands, and we've actually enhanced a lot of the commands from the prior Command Center support of Essbase. For example, the ability to dynamically or push a data file directly to the Essbase server. These are things that but are application specific based upon what we're trying to do. So here, for example, I can load data and use a load rule that's been set up. And let's actually give TM1 now a similar type of thing. So here I'm loading data to TM1 and I'm uploading a tabular data set directly to TM1. Again, application specific. Inside of this, I can also do different types of operations. So I can add different commands as I see fit. So let's go ahead and add another command here. And I'm going to just insert a new branch, and I'm going to insert that on success. What I really want to do is I want to take the data that's coming from SQL Server, and I want to upload that into Anaplan. So let's go ahead and do that, and I'm going to upload that. I have my connection list here. And like Command Center, I have here variables that I can leverage. So I'm just simply going to add in different variables, model, and the server file, I'm just going to call this webinar.csv, and the the source file here is going to be the output, which is something new inside of Onecloud, where I can actually have the output from the queries. So that first command that I have up here is run query. That's going to create an output that we use called the query output. So I don't have to worry or contend with, for example, writing a file to the file system. That's simply an output inside Onecloud. So that's great. I'm now going to push that up. And now the next thing, let's just go ahead and add another command here. I'm going to group that, and I'm just going to go ahead and run a process. And I'm going to run a process inside of Anaplan here. Workspace, and I'll grab the model. And the process name is just my Anaplan process, like that. Now, the other thing I can also do is I can also set up notifications. So here, I mentioned earlier the ability to add, for example, email notifications. I can do that on warning or success or whatever that might be. Let's do warning. And I'm going to go ahead and send demo here an email, and I'll go ahead and send myself that same email. So tightly integrated in with the notifications are the actual individual users that should be getting that notification as well. And I can add attachments as I see fit, or modify the message body or what have you. So that's great. I can add also error handling that's out of the box as well. So things like how long for a task to run, retry attempts, pause between retries, and then the ability as well to isolate or capture different error results and error conditions, as well as output interpretation, have all been built into the product as well. Let's go ahead now and save that. And let's see, I probably have something here. I haven't set up my connection, so we'll go ahead and save that. And here now you can see I got the little icon to the right here indicating that that's going to have a notification. And the last thing I just want to highlight here, which you might be scratching your head, oh great, how do I do post-task actions inside Onecloud? Well, we have this thing called conditionals, and conditionals allow me to test different values. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting the record count coming out of SQL Server for my SQL query, and I'm just going to test if it's greater than 100. If it's greater than 100, then we're going to proceed forward. If it's not greater than 100, well, then it's going to stop the chain in its tracks. So again, that's, this is a simple rule, and I can add additional rules as I see fit based upon different conditions and so forth, and things like being able to parse and understand JSON data now has been built into the product as well. I'm not going to go ahead and save that, so I'll just go ahead and exit out of that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to publish this as a new version to the Onecloud platform. So now that's been published, I can now go over to self-service. And here, what I'm going to do is actually going to execute this. Now, just so you know that I'm not actually doing this, it's not a canned demo, let's just go ahead and put some different data in here. So I'm just going to change this to like maybe 888. And we'll go ahead and execute this update. This is basically my update on my relational database. And so we have that new value 888. Now let's go back to Onecloud here, and let's go ahead and execute this. So we'll execute this, and we're going to see this live. So we can see here that it actually executed that SQL query. We can also see in parallel that it's also executing these other chains, and it's executing them as we see them pop up. And what now it's doing is it's loaded that data up and wrote the data to TM1. And now we actually have the prior action here. And we can see that everything worked correctly, but there was a highlight here with this process, running this process. So out of the box, as an end user, you get that same information, context sensitive, application sensitive, and so forth. So let's now go back. We got a great notification here that we got a warning. Great, okay, I got a warning, and now I can see that I have that. Just so you know that we're not, the previous number here was all this number here. We'll go ahead and refresh that. I'm in now Planning Analytics. So you now can see 888 inside Planning Analytics. Same thing across Anaplan, same thing across Oracle Analytics Cloud, and so forth. So bottom line here, we're able to quickly and easily propagate data from an on-prem system, push it out to 3 different cloud technologies, or actually in this case 4 different cloud technologies, and make that seamless across these different environments. Let me do one other thing just to highlight the scheduling capability inside OneCloud. So here I can come in and I can set up different schedules based upon different conditions, different monthlies. For example, the day of the month, the first or the second Monday, or whatever that might be. There are all sorts of types of ways to actually bring this together from a schedule perspective. Let me go back to hourly just so you can see the visualized scheduler. And now at this point here, I'm going to enable that schedule, and I can even set the color of that schedule if I see fit. We'll go ahead and just save that and republish that. And then now if I come over to my visualized scheduler, I can now see, for example, over the next 2 hours, how this is going to run. I can look over the next 6 hours. So you can start to see, for example, how the visualized scheduler works and how you can apply that with a multitude of different processes and chains that you've scheduled inside OneCloud. So this is giving, hopefully a good idea of what you can do inside OneCloud. The last thing I want to just do a quick highlight on is actually how OneCloud can be managed and run from a messaging platform like Slack. So we have things like slash commands built right into OneCloud, and a slash command basically in Slack, for example, is we have a OneCloud command like this, and we can say execute. At this point here, I can simply, for example, just type in TM1 like this, and it's going to give me a list of all the different chains that I have available inside of TM1. So for example, dev SQL to Essbase, actually that's not the right one, Essbase, OAC to TM1, and dev. Okay, that's it right there. So I have access to all of these. I'm going to go ahead and execute them, and you can see straight away that right from inside Slack, I was able to execute that same chain remotely. So think about the options, or think about the possibilities, being on your mobile phone, not even have to log in, but you also are an authorized user, so you can actually see how this got executed. And this is, of course, all tracked. So you can see here that Quinetti executed this by a OneCloud Slack bot. And again, just highlights how that we can actually pull this together. Okay. So that really starts to round out the demo that I want to take you through today. And what I'd like to do now is actually pop back over to our presentation and let David take us through some migration strategies between moving from Command Center to OneCloud. So David, take it away.
Thank you, Quinn. I appreciate that. And thank you for the great intro earlier. My name is David Mercado. I work for Nrl Consulting. And I'm assuming many of you on this call probably already own Command Center and are looking for a possible new opportunity with OneCloud. So obviously the next question is, well, how do we migrate what we have on Command Center over to OneCloud? So we take different approaches depending on what's going on. The first thing I'll let you know, and some of you may be disappointed to know this, but there's actually, it might be actually a good thing, is that there is no magic button. We're not going to be able to run a migration utility or an upgrade program, or just press a button on OneCloud and pull in all your Command Center processes and commands. Unfortunately, the process will require us to go on site or remotely, but definitely look at your current Command Center environment and analyze what you're currently running. So depending on what we see when we go there, there's different strategies we'll take. The first strategy, as you see, is called the lift and load. And basically, that's where we look at what you have. We see that it's maybe a very simple batch script that you're running. Maybe it's automated and you have it running, on a certain schedule. But there's no, and in our case, all we would want to do at that point is just grab it, put it into Onecloud, and maybe look for some opportunities to update the variables and put them into our Onecloud workspace and change variables. But basically, at that point, we're just lifting and dropping into Onecloud. There may be situations where that may be the case, where there isn't an opportunity to use a biz app, or if you have, let's say, some homegrown apps where you're using very specific batch files to get data out of that and bring it into some other environment where we're not really leveraging the new features of Onecloud, we may just have to continue pointing to your existing script. And that will work that way out of the box. So for those simple situations, that's all we would have to do. The more complex second strategy is the rebuild to simplify. And in that case, we're basically similar, in all cases, we're looking at what you currently have, but we're looking for opportunity to use Onecloud's features and native commands, including the biz apps. This requires the most migration work, but it greatly simplifies automations and reduces maintenance costs, because basically we're taking what used to be a more complex process and using the biz apps to simplify the process, just the way Quinn just showed you in those demos. A lot of the biz apps and the commands you have for the biz apps are just simple, little bubbles that you add to that command. So something that used to probably be a more complex script is now a simple command within a chain. And you can also eliminate redundant scripts and eliminate code for emails, eliminate and reduce error handling. And as you know, Onecloud has biz apps for Essbase, Pbcs, OAC, EDMCS, FCCS, and there's more of those coming down the road, in addition to everything Quinn just showed you on the slides with regards to the biz app technologies that we have. This is probably the most bang for your buck that you're going to get, because it allows us to look at what you have and simplify it. I mean, you guys probably already know there's tools out there that can do, or supposedly do, migrations from an old version to a newer, more complex version, and those tools often have a lot of overhead, and they end up creating a very slow, sluggish application with a ton of code and never really taking advantage of the new features of the new environment you're moving to. So this gives us an opportunity as the consultant, the Onecloud consultant, to look at what you have and say, hey, there's a better way to do that now, so let's simplify it. And it'll most likely, not only will it be easier to maintain, but there's a good chance that the performance will be faster as well. And then the third migration, our strategy, is basically looking to see opportunities to connect and automate with other applications. Remember, Onecloud does many other things that, as you saw in that chart, that comparison chart, that Command Center didn't do. So there may be things that you're currently doing that are not even in Command Center that we now could potentially bring into Onecloud and automate for you and use all the cool notifications and emails that Quinn just showed, including executing them from a mobile device. And that's it. So now in terms of the project plan and the timing, and again, these dates and times are kind of, just kind of rounding off, we're basing it on a typical scenario. But as far as us going in, reviewing what you have in Command Center, that's probably going to take 1 or 2 days. The 1 to 5 day range is probably our ability to migrate what you have in Command Center to Onecloud via the lift and load migration. That was the that first phase. So that's about the 1 to 5 days. And the more time consuming is the 3 to 15 days, where we basically take a look at everything you have and look for opportunities to simplify it. In all cases, it's going to take looking at what you have and redoing it in Onecloud. There's no situation where we're just going to like drag and drop. The only thing that's probably the easiest is the lift and load, because we're just repointing to the same script from within Onecloud. But these are, there's just an idea of how long it may take to get from Command Center to Onecloud in a typical scenario. Now, obviously, that may vary if you're using Command Center to do a ton of other stuff. To do a ton of stuff in addition to what we're thinking about, then that may take a little bit more time. But for the most part, most projects would fall within this range.
David, thank you so much for that synopsis. That was really helpful to get your insight, especially since you've been working with both technologies, and your hands-on experience with clients do appreciate that backdrop. And I can also vouch, from my perspective, knowing both technologies as well, that this is definitely in line as from an expectation perspective. And I just reiterate what David said. There is no magic button to migrate all your Command Center setup over to Onecloud, but taking a pragmatic approach can really make it pretty seamless and pretty easy. And it's a great opportunity to actually refactor how you do your automation today. So with that, we have 9 minutes left. We'd like to open it up to Q&A. I've had a number of questions that have come in, and as promised, I want to ask them. One of the questions that came in, and I'll just read it out, but basically is, how about the agent? Does this work with only cloud tools, or how about an on-premise install of HFM? And the answer to that, I'm actually going to go back to the diagram here just to highlight that. So out of the gate, Onecloud supports has a ground runner that you would install. This ground runner is deployed, or excuse me, is downloaded from your tenant. You get a specific ground runner. Then you install it under a Windows or Linux environment. That would then interface directly with your HFM environment. So that allows you to directly communicate, again, with also other on-prem systems, batch scripts, shell scripts, relational technologies, and so forth. So hopefully that answers that question. Let's see. There was a question around migration. I think we've just covered that one. There's another one here is, how do we install published ground runner on Pbcs Epbs platform? We don't have access to the infrastructure. That's a good question. So Onecloud and the ground runner are interfacing with the published APIs of these cloud technologies. So specific to Pbcs and EDMCS, you do not deploy any Onecloud technology on Oracle's platform. The ground runner actually interfaces directly with those technologies through the REST API. So there's all you need to do is basically install this ground runner. There is an option for not installing the ground runner at all if you don't need to actually work with any type of on-premise technology. But if you do have on-premise technology, then you should have the ground runner installed. But again, reiterate, if you don't have on-premise, you just want to go, let's say, Workday to Pbcs, you can actually avoid the ground runner entirely.
Hey, Quinn.
Yeah?
And that Cloud Runner also, just so they know, is connecting to those cloud applications via their specific URL. So, that's all going to your instance on the cloud.
Yeah. There was a question here around, is there demo software and POC available? Yes, there is for both. Now the demo software, actually that's going to be launched later this month, so you can actually trial this out on your own. But we also would be happy to work with you for POCs. There's a question here on comparing Onecloud to Oracle ODI. That's a long conversation. I'd be happy to pick that up at a later point, but suffice to say, I think ODI is more of an IT-based led application, significantly more complicated without a lot of the out-of-the-box features and functions that Onecloud has. So I think they're sort of apples and oranges, but happy to carry on that conversation later on. We got a question, do we support HFM 11.1.2.3? We do not support 11.1.2.3. We support 11.1.2.4 and greater. This is based upon HFM's Java API versus the prior Windows API. We can probably add that as a OneCloud Biz app. So please reach out to us if you have Biz apps that you would like to manage or have us consider to add. Another question, does OneCloud require any special firewall configuration? The answer is absolutely not. So, and that's actually highlighted right here in this diagram, and I'll just go back to my pointer. So this communication right here, these are purely instructions that go back and forth, and is operating over port 443. 443 is reserved universally as the port that allows cloud technologies to communicate with on-prem. So this does not require any type of port configuration whatsoever, and again is all encrypted traffic running over SSL to the highest level is called TLS 1.2. Another question, any plans to add Workday scheduling logic? Why don't you come back to us on that? I'd love to learn more about what those requirements are. Right now we support the ability to export Workday or capture Workday custom reports and manage and run Workday EMI, I think that's what's called, EMI jobs, internal Workday jobs. Can OneCloud be used with ODI for job scheduling? Yes, it can. That can be done through the command line interface, and that could easily handshake. And to that end as well, OneCloud also has a number of out-of-the-box integrations with other iPaaS tools like Dell Boomi, SnapLogic, Informatica Cloud, so that it can actually handle or asynchronously execute jobs that might be set up in these other iPaaS technologies. So it really creates a nice handshake with these IT-owned iPaaS technologies in combination with a business-owned OneCloud technology. Let's see, how is OneCloud licensed? Happy to take that through a high-level conversation, but it's pretty simple. There's a platform fee, there's a user license, and then there's a technology connection license. So, but we do not license based upon number of records or anything like that. So it's very simple. If you want, for example, Oracle EDMCS with Pbcs with, let's say, Workday, and also IBM Planning Analytics Cloud, that would be 4 Biz apps, number of users, and the platform fees. That's how that is licensed. Let's see, another question. I'm a long-term Command Center customer. Can I license OneCloud through IBM? Currently, that is not available today, but reach out to your IBM sales rep. Would love to pick up that conversation. And we have about 2 minutes left. I think I've answered most of the questions that are out there. There's another specific one on Workday, but please just reach out to me directly, and I'll be happy to answer that one. And I'm just going to pop lastly to this. So where can you learn more? Right here. You can learn more at our website. Follow us on LinkedIn. Follow us. We have an active blog that's out there as well. And I would like to highlight the solutions. If you click on our solutions and click right on through, you can get to see all the different types of capabilities that we do support. And just by simply clicking on any one of these tags here, so for example, IBM Planning Analytics, you can get right over to a specialized landing page here, learn more about us, but also just reach out directly to us, and we can be happy to walk you through the technology and give you more specifics outside of what's available for each of these landing pages. So thank you all. It's been a really productive webinar, great questions, great activity. and really do appreciate your support here. Have a great afternoon, and please reach out to David or myself for further questions. Thank you so much.